One of the most important strategic questions that I work with clients on when they're developing their businesses is, what is the client target? What is the niche? Who are they going to be working with? Who is that ideal client they're aiming to attract? And the question is it B2B or B2C? If it's B2C, business to consumer, who is that individual? What problems are they trying to solve? Is this ideal client willing and able to pay? Do they see value in the solution, and so on? Likewise, for B2B, business to business, what kind of companies? Big corporations, agile startups, charities, NGOs, and so on. And this is deeply ingrained as a foundation for me from my Procter & Gamble days, where we learned the who, what, how framework. So the who was always, who are we targeting? Understanding their insights, their needs, their desires, their fears, and so on, really getting into the psychographics of that client target. And also one of our big CEOs of the time said, consumer is boss. So we always had that in mind. Okay, we need to know that client. In order to know that client, of course, we need to know who the client is. And so the big question is, do we sell to corporates? Or do we do something else? Essentially, that's often what it boils down to. And often I see when we move out of the 9 to 5, move out of that corporate world, we're to some extent rejecting that whole corporate world. Now, I have seen colleagues of mine who actually, very cleverly, I think, went back to those companies that they left and sold their services to those companies. So that might be appealing to you. If you're happy to do that, then that's a pretty clever way of doing it. You're packaging up your services, they're very relevant, your skill set is valued, you have those connections, you have that network already. So by all means, leverage that. But for some of us, we're rebelling against that. We're trying to get away from that world and into a different type of business, industry, a different way of working. And so we almost push that to one side. What I then see with people is that when the business doesn't work right away, their incredible mission and purpose and passion and so on to work with a particular client target isn't getting the traction they want, then they almost inevitably start thinking, oh, but I should be selling to corporates because that's where the money is, that's where the big projects are, and that'll be much easier. So this is the topic for this week's podcast. I won't give too much away, so you can head on over to reimaginingsuccesspodcast.com and you can find your favourite app there to listen to the latest episode. But the question is, what are the advantages and disadvantages with selling to corporates? Because yes, to some extent they do have bigger budgets, they have greater purchasing power, but there's also greater complexity. There are multiple stakeholders, decision-making, sales cycles takes longer, it's a longer process, right? So there are disadvantages as well. Now, there's no right or wrong answer, and I'm certainly not going to argue in one direction or the other, but have a listen to the podcast episode to find out a little bit more nuanced how you might go about making that choice. reimaginingsuccesspodcast.com, and we're talking about selling to corporates.